Hello, this is Tinareo, and today we will not actually be in Minecraft at all, but today we are creating a texture pack. Well, not just one. I will probably be doing one that I will use in a future video, and then some that I can just show you some techniques, and since this is a tutorial. So, I would suggest downloading the default texture pack, or if you want, you can go and look at the experimental texture pack that Mojang is coming up with. If you're watching this later, they might have already came out with it. I do not know. But anyway, will have all these folders, and what you want to do is go through Assets, Minecraft, Textures, Blocks, and there are all these textures. So why don't we get into it and start editing some of them. I edit textures, I use Adobe Photoshop. If you do not have Adobe Photoshop, skip through this part of the video, and I will be using a free software later if you want to check that out. So the first way that we can edit these textures is by just editing the original texture. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to desaturate this. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. And then I am just going to make it a little bit darker still so that it's nice dark brick. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then we'll go on to our second step, or second way of creating textures. Way that you can create textures is by using a template and editing that. So this is one of the experimental textures. See, this is the normal texture, this is one of the experimental textures. It looks a lot nicer, so I can go and edit this. Say I don't want it that saturated, and I want some of these parts to be more grayscale. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this. Select all of this with this tool, and whoops. Make sure that you are using this. If you just use this, then it will just deselect that. So I'm going to Command Z that, and here we go. Just select all that. Now we can go back, hue saturation, and just grayscale that. Say I don't want it that grayscaled, just there. And say we want some diversity in these textures, so I'm just going to add in this. Just going to change these. Maybe make it a little bit darker, or make like these a little bit brighter. And make sure that if you have a texture that kind of continues on, make sure that you change, like, because this part will connect to that part, and if you have this part being like a dark and this part being really white, it'll look really weird. So just don't do that. So make sure that you like have consistency in your textures. So I'll just do that, and that looks pretty nice. I'm just going to make this a little bit darker, but not as dark as the other ones that I did. So there. Now it looks much more mixed and a lot better. This row also looks pretty bland, so I'm just going to add in a little bit brighter, or maybe a little bit more saturated. See, there. Oh, there. So now this looks a lot better than the normal bricks, and you can use this in your builds or wherever. So now I will move on to the third way of creating new textures. Okay, so this might not look like much, and you are right, because this is just white stained glass. But if I wanted to edit this and make it like panes or something, I could just go and select where I wanted, and I could like select it all, and then here, go there, and then I could go and make a new layer, fill it in with white or whatever you want the panes to be. Or if you want to do it quicker, keep that, you can just use a normal block and use the textures of the block. And over here. And you can just edit that block so that it doesn't look like the block anymore, but more of what you wanted it to look like. So now it looks like a pane, and I didn't have to go through and individually texture all of these little pixels, which is pretty annoying. So that is a pretty good life hack for doing this, but it's also should be pretty well known since it's a good thing to do. And now I'm just gonna fill this in with white and change the fill of this down to around 30%. So now it's still white, and I'm just gonna merge all these layers and save it. So now we will move on to the free software, and I will show you kind of how to edit using that. It's not as good as Photoshop, of course, because Photoshop is really nice, but yeah, we'll use it anyway and show you kind of how to use it. Okay, so now we are in the free software. This is a software called Fire Alpaca. Don't know what the name is for, I don't know. But if you are using a Mac, this is a good thing that you can use. If you have like a PC, you can use paint.net, which is kind of like a free version and a simplified version of Photoshop. Not used it before, but I've heard it has some good features. So let's see if we can edit this. Let's see, color wheel. No, that's for painting. What does this do? Okay. Yeah. Let's select this, and let's see what we can do with this. Yeah, we can do hue saturation. That's great. So we can kind of do the same thing that you can do with Photoshop here, and though it is not as nice of a program, it still does get the job done, and it is pretty good. So you can kind of make it look pretty cool, or you can, let's see if we can, yeah, that looks like a nice, like, kind of lava-ish color. Let's just like this a little bit. Yeah. I'm just gonna do this completely desaturated and a little bit darker. And there, we are done, finished with this, and we can save it. So that's what we will do. I don't know why this is kind of like, yep. But I will save this, and we will come back to this texture pack in a future video. Now I will show you some different ways you can edit items and going into more detail with 32 by 32 instead of 16 by 16 or more high definition textures. Okay, so now we are back in Photoshop, and we will kind of show you how to texture some items. So just change this. And let's just kind of change the color and maybe the look of this. Let's make this shorter. And then let's make this, I don't know what to do with this actually. Let's see what we can do here. Yeah. Let's change this to be color. And let's choose this color. Then let's make a brighter color. There, that's what we want to do. And then let's choose this, whoop, there, and also here, and here, to kind of finish it off, and to cover that gap. So now let's get that color, and whoop, and then we can kind of just cut off what we do not need, which is all this excess, I don't know. Yes, so let's do this, and cut that off there, and so now it looks a little bit bulkier, or whatever you want to say. It's a little bit nicer as well, I think. And then we can kind of just make it, say, more green, or purple, or pink, or why don't we make it, like, orangish? Yeah, that looks nice-ish, in a weird way. I don't know. I'm gonna save this, and we'll get into the more HD textures. Now we are getting into more HD textures. So what you want to do is you want to crop this so that the center is right around there, and crop it, yes. And you'll see this is, should be at least 32 by 32. As you can see, if I duplicate this over there, so that's exactly 32 by 32. And now I can make this also 32 by 32. That doesn't change anything because I have a setting on that makes it keep the hard edges on, but you could change this with the shading, but I will not, since I am making a texture pack that is roughly vanilla-ish. So, but if you do want to, you can just go in and kind of select like where you want to edit, or you can just import an image of a high definition block or texture from the web onto Photoshop or any other software that you are using. But thank you guys for watching this tutorial. This has been Tinareo, and I hope to see you in the next video.